Welcome everybody, and thank you all for taking the time out of your day today to join us. My name is Mark Hudson. I'm going to be your host along with Donald MacCormick and David Behr. But first, I must let you all know that all attendees are in listen-only mode. We're recording this live event and it's available to you after it's finished today. And we're also broadcasting live on LinkedIn and YouTube. And we're going to have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, and also we'll encourage you to use the Q&A panel in the Zoom chat windows in the Q&A panel so I can collect questions during the presentation. Facing an unprecedented demand for PPE equipment, ventilators, medication, and the urgent requirement to manage increased staffing levels, USPI and Tenet Healthcare embarked upon an ambitious program to develop an application helping hospital staff quickly and easily manage their increased workload and effective distribution of supplies. Not only did they manage this in a 3-week turnaround, their project also won a prestigious award in the process. It's my great pleasure today to welcome David Behr, Vice President, Business Intelligence and Analytics at USPI and Tenet Health, who joins Donald MacCormick, Chief Strategy Officer at Squirrel365, in our Customer Spotlight session to discuss how they achieved this using Squirrel. Donald, David, over to you.
Mark, thank you very much. And David, many thanks to you for taking your time out to join us here. And as Mark said, we're going to be covering your award-winning 3-week dashboard. I saw your presentation at Speak BO a few weeks ago, and it's a great story. But I thought it might be good if you started giving some background on you and your journey in BI and how you got to USPI and sort of what your role is there now.
Sure. Thanks for having me on this today. So my background is I've been doing business intelligence for about 19 years now, which I can't believe. I've taken the path, I think it's the same as your path. I was done the Crystal Reports originally, then business, or I guess then it was Crystal Enterprise, then Business Objects. So I've kind of taken that path through the 19 years and seen all the changes it's gone through. I've been at USPI for just over 7 years now and was brought in, tasked with this large healthcare company that didn't have a data warehouse or business intelligence in-house. So an opportunity to build from the ground up. So that's what I've been doing for the past 7 years here.
Cool. And for the international audience who, I suspect people in the US will know who USPI are, but for the international audience, who are you? What do you do?
So USPI is a company that owns about 280 short stay, same day surgery centers across the country, USA. Right. And we've got about 21 hospitals, kind of surgical hospitals. We manage, operate all these surgical centers and hospitals.
And how many people, how big is the organization?
So I think USPI is itself around 20,000 people.
Right.
Out in the field. I mean, mostly it's staff that's in hospitals and surgery centers, corporate office, maybe 700-800 people. Yeah, it's a pretty large company across the country.
And so one of the stats I think that came out of your previous presentation that sort of made me sort of sit up is that, and so how big is your BI team to cover those people?
So we've somewhat recently doubled in size to 4.
So 4 people for 20,000.
We started out, it was 2 of us for about the first 5 years.
Right.
That's on the BI side, and then the data warehouse team, which isn't my team, it's a separate team, was also 2 people.
Right.
And my team is 4 on the BI side. And this is on BI because there's also Tenet, which is a whole nother story, but we'll keep this presentation around the USPI company.
Right, cool. So yeah, so that's quite a ratio, 4 to 20,000. I think you should take a bow for productivity there. So, but anyway, as I said, we're sort of really here to talk about your application, which was the award that we were talking about was at the Speak BO conference. Mm-hmm. So what was the background to? I mean, I know it's a sort of COVID, and COVID is the thing of the day, but what was the background? What was driving the business to need this, and how did it all come about?
Yeah, so late March when COVID hit and we realized that this was going to be this big pandemic, and it was almost like, we were going down this one path of what we're working on, and all of a sudden that stops and we got a tangent, everything flipped, and now the focus is on this side. And, one of the key things that the business realized they needed to keep up with was a bunch of information that we don't track in our data warehouse or database or software, just data that didn't exist. So we needed to know, what are we PPE? Do we have enough PPE in our facilities? the personal protective equipment? Do we have drugs that is necessary for patients when they come in? This is probably separate drugs than we're normally used to carrying doing day surgeries. In hospitals, we need to track beds available for both surgery centers and hospitals. We need to know how many patients came in that tested positive, how many nurses had interacted with positive patients. Did we have to put any nurses in quarantine? All this different information around COVID that didn't exist before, we realized we really needed to start tracking. And then one of the key reasons we need to track this kind of at the corporate level was if facility A in Phoenix had more than enough of one product and there's another facility maybe 100 miles away that's lacking a certain product, can we start, redirecting product? So it was a way to manage, making sure everyone had what they need and not overstock here, understock here. That's kind of the big picture. How can we get visibility into this stuff real time?
And as you say, due to the nature of the pandemic taking by surprise, the remarkable thing about what you did is that it wasn't like all this information was just sitting there nicely organized and all you had to do was deliver it. The 3 weeks you delivered this in, it also consisted of actually pulling that, not just pulling the data together, pulling a data capture mechanism together at the same time.
Yes, this was nothing that existed. So it was really starting from scratch. It's how do we get data that doesn't exist right now, inputted somewhere and then delivered in a format that we can all see it, consolidated.
Right. And so what was that seems almost an impossible task. It's like everyone says data is the biggest part of a project, but to say you're starting a 3-week project that has to be delivered without any data. So how did you solve that problem?
Well, so the first step was how are we going to get so what is the information we need? And this was defined by our operators. This is the operations side of the business, was defining, all right, we need to capture these different data points. And they would list it out. Then they got together with the data warehouse team and my team to say, all right, we need to start capturing this data from all our facilities and hospitals. And granted, ASCs, the surgical centers, data is a lot less than what we need to capture compared to hospitals. So there's some overlapping data that applies to both. And then hospitals have a lot more information we need to track. So let's get these two lists of different data feeds that we need to start capturing. What's the best way that we can get this? And it was decided, well, we're pretty comfortable doing data capture through SharePoint because we've done that before. We've created forms before in the past, not for BI related activities, but for other activities. So at least the facilities are familiar enough with SharePoint and how to go in and input data into a form. So step one was we defined the fields. Step two was how are we going to get them to get us this data on a nightly basis? And it was decided we're going to use these SharePoint forms. This is what it's going to look like every night. So this is the not so great part, but it was the only way around this if we wanted to turn this around quick, was they have to have someone dedicated at the end of the day to go input these fields. How many beds available, any quarantine nurses, drug amounts, quantity levels, how many have been diverted. So all that information we had to have them input, submit, and we would then suck that data down into the data warehouse. Once that was in the data warehouse, my team can take over and we use business objects. So we created a universe around the tables that would update as soon as, the data would update nightly. So those universes were fresh every night. Then we would turn around and build a WebE report, which was, here's all the results of all the facilities, all the data from the night before, which we then can turn into, we have InfoBursts. So we use that to cache the data. So every morning, report would run, cache on our InfoBurst server. And then finally, Squirrel was the product we used to build the dashboard. It just interacts with that cache that's sitting there. So we call it real time, but it's really a daily update.
Right, but it's exactly what they need to run the business and move supplies and people around, right? Yeah. And
so then once we had that, because the data comes in at the facility level, to then say, all right, well, here's the numbers by region, here's the numbers by market, here's the numbers at the corporate level. And we can start high, we can drill down a facility, or start a facility, drill up to corporate.
And I love the fact that it's not just many people see dashboards as sort of like on the wall, and when it goes red, you sort of, what am I going to do now? But this was actually built in with the idea that not only does it tell you what's going on, but gives you a solution, because you can look at other sort of close facilities and say, right, we can do a transfer. So it actually drives action as well as just sort of as surfacing problems.
Yes, and there's definitely a lot more we could have done, but this serves the need for doing exactly what you said.
Right, excellent.
Region by market, by facility, and get your information.
And you have a version of it with sort of sanitized data that you can share with us.
Sure.
It's always the best bit to see it actually in action.
Let's share my screen. Tell me when you see my screen.
We can see it. Yeah, that's great. Looks great.
Yeah, so this is our portal that we use at our company. So we've ended up building this in-house portal, which is where we use to deliver all of our dashboards and reports. So as you see, you've got tabs across the top. So if I'm a CEO or an administrator of a facility and I log in, it's going to instantly know who I am, highlight the tabs I have access to. Within the tabs, you've got folders. So you've got reports that update daily, weekly, they're ad hoc, some interactive capabilities. But all these little arrow black icons are all the Squirrel or interactive dashboards that we've put in the portal. So that's what you're looking at here. They go to their operations tab. This updates daily. You click on it. And then just like that, it'll pop up. And yeah, it's really not the fanciest dashboard. It's not like when you think of a dashboard, you think of all kinds of gauges and bar graphs and drill down. Really, that wasn't the point of this one. The point of this was, how am I going to get all these key stats at different levels within the organization, in a very easily consumable fashion to people that they don't even have to know that this is a dashboard in Squirrel. They just need some like web application they can look at and really quickly see, how many gallons do we have total across the company. If I need to look at it by a specific region, I can click on a RVP. Now I'm seeing for this RVP, looks like she's got the Florida area, and you can see within Florida, here's my totals. So if I wanted to know, how many surgical gowns, there's 72 that are available right now. I can just click on it, drill down to see the facility level available if I wanted to within the metric itself, or, drill into the facilities and get their totals.
Right,
so,
right.
Pretty basic. It's, give me the facility, give me the region, give me the market, or let's look at this at the corporate level and see, we try to organize it into your gown section, your glove, your sanitizing, your masks, your drugs. And then again, if you're a hospital, it's a little different. We track a more specific, here's the specific to hospital metrics that we're looking at here.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't see at the other facility. So we have these two faces, basically, two different pages within it.
And the great, as you say, the great thing about this is that they don't care what they call it. As you say, they don't call it a dashboard or anything. It just comes in. They can use it. They can get the numbers they need. It's like something I've said for years: is people can get in, they can get what they need, and they can get out and get on with their jobs. Because the people who use it, it's almost the most extreme example. People who are using this dashboard are doctors, nurses, pharmacists, people who are their job is nothing to do with data. It's to do with people and medicine. So the more time they spend here, the less time they spend on the front line fighting the pandemic. So this is just such a lovely sort of easy to use interface. And so, yeah. So did people...
Yeah, and the goal was, as you said, you're rolling it out to a lot of people that don't even know what a dashboard means and what that is. And we didn't want to spend time training on, all right, here's your new dashboard. This is how you use it. It's got to be, I'm going to look at this and intuitively know exactly what I need out of it and don't have to call the BI team for 20 minutes of training on a new tool. It's open. It makes sense. Like, I don't think I would need to explain to you what this is. You can look at it and figure out pretty quick what you're looking at.
Yes, and also it gives you the high level you can see, but then it's clickable as you showed. You click into the numbers.
We highlighted it just so you might not know that, but as soon as it highlights, you think, and I get that little finger pointing, which gives you the hint. Oh, maybe I can drill in on that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have known just by looking at it. But as you hover,
it almost draws you into the sort of, I wonder what's under here. I get it if I click it. So it just pulls the user in. No, it's lovely, and also, and people overlook this often. It's a lovely. It feels really nice. It's well designed. It's not many dashboards look horrible and people but again, the UI draws you in because it's just nice to use. Yeah.
And that took a few iterations to kind of land on this, and we were able to leverage the UK, the Infoverse UK team. They're very good at the layout. So the way this started was, we knew we had these metrics. How are we going to lay it out? So I had a blank piece of paper, and it was drawing on paper, just kind of scribbling kind of the layout. That's typically how we start with our dashboards. Then it's, all right, now let's get in the tool itself and start laying it out. And in fact, I'll probably even show you here kind of what the first version looked like. If you can see that.
Right, yes.
You can see it was very clustered, but we had the idea. We know we wanted the drill downs. We know we want to, do sections based off the type of product we're looking at here. But it started off kind of boxy and on top of each other. And even though we thought that looked really good when we put it together, as soon as we then took this, so it was a paper, then it was this, and then it was, all right, here, I gave it to the UK team and said, all right, you guys are the creators of Squirrel. This is what we've come up with here. Can you beautify this and make it a lot nicer? And then they came up with that new layout, which was
right.
A lot cleaner looking. They go with the lighter colors, with kind of the grid lines versus the boxiness that we had. So yeah, that's how it kind of ended up in this layout.
Yes, right. It looks fantastic. And this whole idea of delivering to sort of, because often analytics is sort of, and a lot of the analytic tools are aimed at people who do analytics, who do analysis. They're the analysts who work on data all day. But this is a completely different audience. This is out. Yeah, you could argue that people are doing analytics, but they don't call it that. They don't know that. And is
Right.
that a balance that you have at sort of at USPI in terms of those two audiences that you need to?
In fact, one of the slides I had on this presentation, which I can pull up again, just kind of when we started this BI group back in the 7 years ago, we put this together kind of as a selling point to the business. When they hired me, I kind of said, this is where our strategy is as a BI group, that we're going to have these two different kinds of end users. We're going to have the end users, if you had to think of it on like a spectrum, the people on the left side of the spectrum here are the people that are actually going to be analysts within a corporate department. So maybe in the finance group, there's an analyst they have that really needs to dig into data. So those are the people we're going to actually train on how to get into business objects, how to go tap into universes and drag and drop and write reports and schedule and kind of dig into data. And, we're going to have to train them on data sets, teach them how to use tools, and kind of came to the number that it was probably going to be 5% of the customers in the BI world that we're going to be presenting products to are going to fall into that left side, that optimizing the business, deep analysis business. But 95% of my customers that are still going to be end users of BI are going to fall on this other side, which are the operators of the business. They're running the business. They're out in the facilities, or they're heads of corporate departments, and they just need to get answers quick. And they want to be able to log in. And that's what this portal was originally built for. It's how can I not have people jump into business objects and get bogged down with universes and reports and dragging and dropping stuff. I want them to just come into one central location, which is what this portal ends up being. And it's mostly dashboards like this that they can interact with, but requires zero training. So if you look back on that slide, it's used by everybody. It really requires no training. It should be built. Everything we build in a way that's, you look at it, play around with it for about a minute or two, and you'll figure out exactly how to use it. And if something is a little more complicated, we can put a little question mark, click on it, and it might explain something about, one of the metrics you're looking at.
Yeah.
But keep in mind that when we're building something, it needs to be kind of like an app on your iPhone where you open it and you intuitively know what you're doing and how to use it. So we kind of go with the same strategy. So this is 95%. This is the thousands of users we have fall on this side, on this right side.
And I mean, it makes a lot of sense because, as you say, these are the people that are running the business. This is where the action happens. You get these people doing the right thing, the business is smooth. You can analyze things to death, but until you take that analysis and drive action by the operational users, you don't get that. And it's great to see you using Squirrel for this because Squirrel is exactly designed to do this. You can build an interface which does what it is you need to do to communicate with your end users. You don't have to leave anything really for them to think about. They just get the stuff that they need to do. So yeah, no, it's really nice.
Everything should be just a click away. That's kind
yes. No, absolutely. It's sort of, I've often said it's a bit like a sort of a weather forecast on the website. I mean, there's lots of data, lots of analysis gone on to produce it. But when I use it, I don't think I'm doing analysis. I think I want a weather forecast, and it's anything I want is 2 or 3 clicks away. So yes. The other thing that's interesting about you talk about this as a dashboard, and but it's sort of to some people, a dashboard is that I've got a gauge here, as you say, a gauge, a table, a graph, and sort of I put it on the wall and I look at it. So this goes much more than that. You can click into it, you can drill, you can get things, detail popping up, you can switch views to hospital-specific metrics. A lot going on here. And this is heading towards sort of, if you like, a full-blown web application. In your mind, how would you differentiate between a dashboard, which obviously is what you guys consider this to be, and a sort of a full-on sort of application, if you like?
Yeah, so the way we've defined more web applications in our portal anyways, and for the end user is so one of the features that Squirrel has and Excelsius has, and people used it in the past, and they had the Infosol, they purchased Infosol InfoBurst product, is there's a write back feature.
Right.
Meaning dashboard, it's not just viewing information or consuming information like we're doing in this, and this is what I call a dashboard. It's something that the data is within the tool itself, and you're not inputting data and seeing results back of your input. You're just viewing data that's coming from some other data source somewhere, and you're just displaying it. So that's what we call dashboards. But as soon as we start using that write back feature, for instance, in this dashboard, if we decided in phase 2 that not only do we want to display data, but I want to be, as a facility, if I'm looking at this and I'm looking in a region, let's say I'm Linda and I'm looking here and I'm seeing my regional numbers and I'm clicking on a gown, and I realize, all right, this facility down here is low on a certain product. Maybe we need to get some of the product from Florida Del Rey to ship the product over to Park. If I was able to click on that now and request 20 gowns from Del Rey, submit, and that causes an action to take place where a transaction happen. So now all of a sudden I'm interacting and inputting data and seeing results of data, which is changing the values in the dashboard. At that point, it becomes an application.
Right.
So,
but the great thing about that is for the end user, it's just another feature of the front end. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to go somewhere else. They just yeah.
But we would then call that more of a web application versus the dashboard. Now they're using it as a software tool almost.
Yeah. No,
we have some dashboards out there that I've got schedulers that are at hospitals that are scheduling cases, and they use our Squirrel dashboard essentially to call physician offices, input scheduled cases that they were able to capture using specific questions. And as soon as they submit the case on a specific day, it's writing that data back to a table real time and then shooting the results back even within the same dashboard they're using. They'll see on the bottom their gauge turn. And if I'm an administrator or a regional vice president and I've got my scheduler dashboard open, I can see real time throughout the day as cases are getting scheduled. I can see where they're getting scheduled, which doctors, which facilities. So that's more of a web application.
Right.
It's all within the same portal. Yeah, it's just another, in my mind, technically another dashboard, but that's more of an application for the people within this portal.
Right, and I could dig into that application and more all day because it's fascinating stuff. But I can see from Mark's been sort of moderating some questions, so I think it's probably to get the audience sort of questions answered. I'm going to switch back to Mark, and we'll take some questions for the from the audience, from the people out there. Mark.
Thank you, thank you, David. That was excellent. I'm just in awe at that dashboard. It's absolutely stunning. Great job to the team, and thank you for taking time out of your day to share that with us today.
Sure.
We have had a number of questions actually, Donald. You are right. I'm going to kick off with John, who joined us on the Zoom webinar. John asks, David, can users see how many of whatever has been used over the last day so they can think about how many they need to order for the future?
No, I can't see that, only because this is information, again, that's being inputted on a nightly basis. This doesn't sit in any kind of software that I can track, how many gowns were used in a day. Now, I could go see how many patients came into a facility previous day and maybe make assumptions around some of these, but no, we don't track that. I can't see that.
Okay, thank you. A question here from Nikki. Nikki joins I think Nikki joined us on one of our live streams. She asks, did the team look at any other product to help solve this problem?
Say that again?
Did the team look at any other product to help solve this problem? Yeah,
so interesting. So Tenet, which was also tasked with the same, they had to build one of these too, and it's a totally different data warehouse, different set of hospitals out there. So a different group put that together. They used Tableau to build theirs. Same concept where they were using forms, data coming in real time, and then served it up. So, and they had a little head start over what we did. So I looked at what they built, and it looked okay, but when we have Tableau, it's an option we had. This was a lot easier, quicker, and nicer looking, so I didn't go with that route.
Fantastic, thank you for that.
But yeah, it's pretty much Tableau or this.
Okay, there you go, Rachel. Sorry, Nikki. The next question is from Rachel. Rachel asks, where was the most time spent on the project?
From my team, it was building out the Squirrel. I mean, it took the development of this and the iterations, what took the most time. I mean, building the forms and the data warehouse side wasn't my group, but I think that was pretty quick turnaround. Once we had the tables, building the universe and the reports around the table, maybe a day or two. I mean, that was also pretty easy because we're not talking complex table structure. It was ASC tables and hospital tables. And then just linking them together. So it was pretty easy to get that. It was really more of a, now that I've got the data, it's sitting in a cache, the time it took just to kind of lay this out and make sure it looked good was the majority of the time.
Okay, thank you for that. One other question here from Peter. Peter asks, and I think you may have just touched on this in your response to Nikki's question, but key reasons for choosing Squirrel?
Much nicer looking and flexibility. I mean, it really is just a blank screen, white screen, and you can make anything happen, where I feel like you're kind of limited in some of the other tools. So for us, much easier. I like the output, much easier for us to throw this into our portal, and pretty easy to make changes. You know, we had to make a lot of changes and layout structure changes. It just, within Squirrel, it's really drag and drop, move it over and move on. So just ease of use and output is just much prettier.
That's fantastic. That's great to hear. And I know, and one for myself, if that's okay. And again, just really come back to my comments of just how great that looked, and the look and feel and the ease of use. Do you think the aesthetics of the dashboard, and the way that you laid it out, do you think that helped the zero training that you talked about for the nurses and the hospital staff, etc.?
Yeah, for sure. Because there are some dashboards we built in the past that are more complex that we had to do training on, and that's when I realized, all right, we've got to start laying this out in a much more app-friendly type layout. So yes, the goal, sure, and anything we're doing going forward is how can I build this without having to do any training? I mean, when we're talking thousands of users and over the country, it's impossible for us to do. When we've tried this, the first few years when we rolled out things in this portal, we'd do a webinar call and we'd have to do 2 of them, and you'd have 1,000 people on a call and people coming and going and questions, and it's borderline impossible. And then there's turnover and change, and you can't keep it fresh with new people. How do you get the new people trained? So really our goal now is we need to build stuff that requires zero training.
Yeah, great, thank you. I think we're about at our limit of the 30 minutes. Donald, can I hand over to you to wrap up, please?
Yes. So all I'd say is it's fascinating, David, to see. It's amazing what you did and how little time you did it. And it's sort of almost a sort of archetypal response to a pandemic style situation. So, but thank you so much for taking the time today to go through it with us. I'm sure that people will feel similar to me about it, and sort of, so yeah, thank you very much, and we'll speak again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Okay. Thanks,
David.
David.
All right.
Thank you, everyone online.
Bye-bye.